Hey, welcome. My name is Stephen Knight. I'm excited to be here with you today. We're going to be talking about how to implement a family ministry strategy. It's going to be at your church in your children's ministry. If you're a children's ministry leader, you're going to get a lot of practical takeaways from the seminar and how to apply family ministry strategy to your children's ministry. Equip parents as spiritual disciplers of their children. There's the primary ones. How do you come alongside them? How do you partner with them? Following a family ministry strategy to partner with them. So I'm going to share some of those things with you. If you're not a children's ministry leader, if you're a youth pastor, if you're a leader of a men's ministry, women's ministry, whatever that might be, you're going to get a lot of practical takeaways for your ministries as well. And how do you reach families? How do you disciple them? How do you reach them with the gospel? We're going to talk through a lot of those pieces today. I'm excited that you've joined me. Again, my name is Stephen Knight. A little bit about me. I've been in ministry for over 12 years now. I'm the family ministry leader at Wood Creek Church in Dallas, Texas. Also a children's and family ministry author, published several books on those topics. And the last couple of books in children's ministry were Bright Ideas for Children's Ministry, as well as Pulse, Pumping Life into Your Kids' Ministry. Excited to be a part of those projects. I'm the founder of KidminTools.com. It's a website for children's ministry resources, things like technology, things like teaching help, anything you might think of that would help equip you to be a better children's ministry leader or a better family ministry leader. That's why I created the website, and that's what it's there for. So take a look, check it out, see if there's something that might be helpful there. I love just engaging with people through the website as well. So I love children's and family ministry. It's something that I'm passionate about. I've studied children's ministry and family ministry both in my undergraduate and graduate in seminary as well, studying those topics. So not only have I been heavily involved in ministry, but something that I've studied personally myself as well, and love just implementing in the church and encouraging others to do so as well. So I hope that as we cover a lot of the different things in the seminar today, that you will hear some things that you can implement in your ministry as well. As you're preparing to implement the overall planning phase of your family ministry strategy, there are several different elements that you need to look at and think through, just so that you can prepare well. Because before you put any of these steps into place, you need to know where you're going. Because otherwise, you may implement something and it may or may not work, but it'll never influence your whole ministry. It won't influence your whole church, and ultimately, it won't lead you to where you want to go if you don't have that strategy, that planning part of the process in place, so that you know this is where we are, this is where we want to be, and here are the steps that we need to get there. So I want to cover that with you. But the first part of this whole process is talking to the Lord and bringing this to Him in prayer. I will encourage you, because none of this can happen without the work of the Holy Spirit in your life and the life of the parents in your church and your church as a whole, as they come together to work with the family, to minister to the family. So as we're getting ready, I want to encourage you, just take a few moments. I'm actually going to stop and give you several minutes to pray and ask God for guidance. Where does He want your ministry to go? What does He want that to look like? And just bring those things for the Lord. So spend about 2 minutes or so in prayer. I'm just going to give you that time before we get started. And I'll come back in and I'll pray for you guys as we jump in. But that's the most important part, because as we're looking at this whole strategy, prayer is needed throughout the whole time. As you're implementing each step, we need to be in constant prayer as we come alongside parents, as we're planning things. So I encourage you, let's go ahead and take that time now. All right, let's pray together and jump in. Lord, as we get ready to look at this and how to implement family ministry strategy in our church, we ask that you give us guidance, give us wisdom, and where each of us individually needs to go, how we should lead our church in reaching families. We thank you that you've already blessed our ministries and the work you've done, and know none of that work can be done without you. I ask that you would continue to work in our lives and in each of our ministries. In your name, amen. All right, so we're going to get started today and talk about different parts of the ministry strategy. So let's jump on in. Before we get started today, I just want to talk to you a little bit about this family ministry strategy, because there are a few feelings you may have as you're hearing it, if you've heard about these different strategies before, but as you're considering what you're doing, first you're going to feel excitement. You're going to say, hey, we'd love to do this. Our church has been needing this for a long time. We'd love to equip families, to disciple them, and empower parents to be spiritual disciplers in their families. And that's an exciting thing, and it should be. It should get you excited. But you need to know also, as you get into it and you get into some of these details that we're going to cover today, they may seem a little bit overwhelming because there's a lot of things involved. There's a few things I want to tell you. Is first, I'm going to try to remove as much work for you as possible. As you're hearing things and we're looking at strategies, I'm going to try to help you get past a lot of that initial work. But second, also, you need to realize this isn't something that will just happen overnight. So as you're thinking about this and how to implement this in your church, you may find that, hey, there are a few things we already have going on that are very similar to what you're talking about today. And then I say, great, that is exciting. Keep them going, and let's build on that. And if you don't have any of these going, if you might be a little frustrated or disappointed, don't worry at all. It's okay. This is something that you're going to try, and you're going to take a few steps at a time. And this is something that's going to be working by next week or next month or 6 months from now. It's not going to be perfect by then. But it's something that you're going to implement, and you're going to try, and it'll take time to develop. But be encouraged. I've talked to many family ministry leaders around the country, interviewed them, had conversations with them about what they're doing, what's working well, what hasn't worked well, and what's taking time. A lot of them have said, you know what, we're really looking at closer to 5 years where this strategy is implemented, it's working, the church is on board with it, and parents are equipped, they're coming, they're asking questions and getting involved. But 5 years is a long time to get things to that point where everything is working really well. But let me encourage you, because it's totally worth it. I've seen the end results of taking these steps, and each of the steps have rewards in and of themselves, but excuse me, but also when you reach the end, when you reach that point where you have a successful family ministry strategy implemented in your church, it's exciting because you see parents fully engaged in the discipleship of their children. You see the church partnering with them. You see other people within the church. You see the single adults partnering with them. You see grandparents partnering with their families. You see different areas of the church all working together to disciple the family, not as some awkward program, but as a natural thing where the church is working together to do family ministry. In the biggest sense, family ministry does cover the whole church. It covers every different life stage. But in a smaller sense, family ministry does cover specifically parenting and how that works with kids and with youth. Also covers marriage as well. So we're going to look at some of those more detailed parts as well, and a few elements of how do you pull in the church? How do you influence the church with a family ministry strategy? Today we are focusing specifically on children's ministry. But you're going to see different things. How do you get the single adults engaged with your children's ministry? How do you get the different age? How do you get grandparents involved? Things like that. We're going to try to tackle some of those topics, and I'd encourage you, even in the midst of the seminar, we're not going to be able to cover everything, but do a little more research. See what you can do to empower parents in your church, and partner with them as children's ministry leaders, partnering alongside of them to encourage them in the growth of their kids spiritually. I'm excited to share with you today. I just wanted to tell you that up front. Some of this will take time, but also encourage you. We're going to give you practical steps to grow in leadership and how to implement that in your church. So let's get started. All right, so as we're looking at our family ministry strategy, try and decide what's going to be in it. First, we need to know up front, how often are we going to be praying for our ministry and the things that are going on? So go ahead and write that down right now. One of the things that you're going to be working on is deciding when you're going to be praying. Is that once a week? Is that every day? When do you pray as a team? When do you pray individually? All of those things we need to think through and write down so that we're intentional. I'd recommend right away, as soon as you're looking at whatever team you meet with, if you're doing this by yourself, maybe you're asking a few people for advice. Every time you're meeting with someone, start off with prayer about this. Seek the Lord's will. I also encourage you to ask whoever, your ministry supervisor, your pastor, whoever that might be at your church, ask them to be in prayer for this as well. Even if they're not directly involved in this, ask them to be in prayer for it as well. So write down a few of those things right now that you want to be in prayer for. The next area we're going to look at is biblical principles. By those, I mean, when you're looking at Scripture, what does Scripture tell us? Because everything we're doing, we're basing off of what Scripture says. So I'm going to read a few things for you. For example, when I designed ours for our church, one of the biblical principles is based off of Mark 16:15. It says, he said to them, go into all the world and proclaim the gospel to the whole creation. And based on this passage, we're saying Christians are called to share the gospel with the world. In our family ministry, one of the most important practices will be sharing the gospel to every age level. So some of you already have age level ministries happening, and perhaps this is something you've already got going on, which is great. We just want to start with biblical principles for what we're doing. A few others I'll share with you. 2 Timothy 3:16 is talking about how Christians are called to grow in their faith and disciple other Christians. So each ministry area, our children's ministry, is going to be focused on discipling believers with the teaching of Scripture, taking a main role in fostering spiritual growth. So based on this Scripture passage, this is what we want to do in our children's ministry to become an effective family-focused children's ministry that has a family ministry strategy in place. So that's what we're doing, is we're looking at these biblical principles. We've got verse, and we've got explanation of how that relates to what we want to do. Another principle is Matthew 19:4-6, as we're looking at that of how Christians are called to defend and protect God's marriage design and to minister in Christ's name to them and to those that suffer the brokenness as a result of the consequences of sin. So that's specifically on marriage. And another one that we have specifically for kids, if you've ever heard or read the Shema in Deuteronomy 6, we're looking at Deuteronomy 6, 4-9. And then based on that, we're saying children blessing from God. It's a primary responsibility of the parents to disciple their children with the help of the church. So those are just some biblical principles. You can come up with more, but we just wanted to have something to base our ministries on, because if we just go creating things and putting all these new and latest ideas in place without having our biblical foundation set, then some of that can be for naught, because it's not based on Scripture and what we want to do. Again, knowing why we do what we do is so important. But once you have those biblical principles in place, next we're going to be looking at core values of your family ministry strategy. What are the things that are most important? Here are a few things that we wrote. We wrote age-appropriate discipleship. God created his people to learn in various ways at different points of their lives. Our goal is to create people according to their developmental stages, starting from birth and moving up through adulthood. So age-appropriate discipleship. In creating this plan, I'm just looking at it. We've already got some of these elements in place at our church, and which other churches that I've worked with have some of these in place. But just looking at how do we develop age-appropriate discipleship. Hopefully you have some of that in your children's ministry. If not, maybe that's something you're looking at. But that's a core value for us. That's an important part of family ministry, because we're not going to eliminate the discipleship role of the church in this process. We're going to strengthen it with age-appropriate discipleship and have that happening. Another core value, we wrote down number 2, if you want to write these down as well, is lifetime spiritual formation. I wrote, God intends for Christians to continue to grow in their faith. We will seek to help Christians grow spiritually and find ways for them to serve in the local church and community. And just continuing that lifetime spiritual formation. A third row is the essential nature of marriage ministry and how marriage is designed by God specifically for husband and wife. And our goal as a church to come alongside couples and disciple them is to seek to grow in their marriage in order to glorify God and enjoy each other. As you can see, even though we're developing things, and I wanted to help equip our children's ministry and other children's ministries as well, looking at how to do that. With anytime you talk about family ministry, I think you've got to include some aspect of marriage ministry as well. So even if that's someone else at your church, just having that as one of your core things. A fourth thing, that I think is very important, is empowering the family and partnering together. And this is really what we're getting at today, is we're talking about family ministry strategy. The church should seek to equip parents and other family members to be the main disciplers of the children. Additionally, the church should come alongside the family and help disciple the children, having several other Christian adults intentionally discipling them as well. And that's so key for what we're talking about today, because even though we're talking about empowering parents, we don't want to just leave parents out to do things all by themselves. We want to disciple the parents, but we also want other Christians to come in and have that healthy discipleship from other Christians within the church as well. Those are 4 of our core values. That's very important to know what you're about as a church. I also created a mission statement, and it says this: the family ministry's mission is to partner with families to equip them to be faithful disciples of Christ, who are growing spiritually and are also discipling their own children with the help of the church. It's important that you have that. It's a 1-sentence mission statement. Maybe it's 2 sentences, but try to keep it 1 to 2 sentences. What's your mission statement for this strategy? How are you going to implement in your children's ministry? What is your mission there? And based off of that, we created a motto. Pretty simple, but home plus church equals partnership for family ministry. Because at the end of the day, this is a partnership that we're putting in place. Because if you got churches that are over here doing their thing, if you got parents over here doing theirs, you want a healthy partnership. Because right now, it might be kind of disjointed, and you've got the church doing this, and once in a while, the parents are involved in doing something. But our hope is that as you've got the church over here doing discipleship, that you'll have the parents that are here, and the church comes alongside them, so that it's that healthy partnership. They're moving together, moving forward. I use that illustration just to show you what it looks like sometimes to join, but hopefully our goal is to have them moving at the same pace, moving together, working together in sync for the discipleship of children in your church. So that's just a little bit about some of the initial steps we're taking in designing that. So think through that, develop that how you'd like. At the other seminar, I'm going to give you some resources. If you'd like a copy of some of these, I can give those to you as well. A few things just to think about as you're preparing to finalize just that strategy and write this down and compile it. I encourage you, maybe this is a great time for you to do an internal and an external scan of your church. And what do I mean by that? Internal scan, we're looking at how many families does your church have, how many kids, what ages, things like that. And then looking bigger picture, maybe it's time to take a step back. What's your weekly church attendance or the average travel time of your church? What's the giving in your church look like? What does your ethnic diversity look like? What does gender diversity look like? How many? Do you have a lot of men in your church? Do you have a lot of women? What does it look like? Generational diversity? What age are they? And that can make a big difference in your strategy as well, based on how many people you have. How many kids do you have? If you are overwhelmed with kids, but don't have a ton of adults that aren't parents, you're going to need a lot more parent engagement in discipling other kids as well. But if you have a lot of senior adults, if you got a lot of single adults, if your church is built like that, you've got a lot of partnership potential between the rest of the church and families as well. And not to say that others don't, but just look at what does your church look like in terms of generational diversity. See, is there a way that you can figure that out? Does your church have a system where you can just kind of see where people are at? And sometimes it can be simple as you walk into your church on a Sunday morning, go into service, and look around. Most churches you look around, you can see real quick, do you have younger families in here? Do you have grandparents in there? Do you have a lot of single adults? What does your church look like? So just try to get a gauge for that. And different things like how many volunteers do you have? So that's just doing an internal scan inside of your church. Next, I'd recommend doing an external scan, just looking at the community around your church, the people that you're trying to also reach as well. You're equipping your families, but also how do you reach your community? So look at things like technology. Are people tech savvy? Are they not in your community? What does that look like? Maybe what is their economic status? Are you ministering in the lower class, middle class, upper class? What do those ratios look like? And that'll be something that helps you as well, because each of those different economic classes have different struggles. And by no means is one class better than the other, because you each have different struggles and different needs for how to disciple kids. I've personally worked in multiple churches where some were in very low-income neighborhoods, some were very wealthy neighborhoods, and you see big needs all across the board. So just kind of break down what that looks like. Other things like if you got social differences in your community, how many people are Christians? Do you have a community that has a chunk of Christians in it? Have a larger percentage of Christians, or do you have a lot of atheists or Muslims? Or what does the community look like? What different religious beliefs are there? Because that affects things too as you're looking to reach out and equipping families to reach out. Also, things like education can help as well. Do you have a lot of parents, the parents that you're working with? Did they graduate high school? A lot of them college graduates, or did they graduate from graduate school? Or what does that look like? Because you've got different levels and different things that you need to work with. If you've got adults that struggle with reading, you don't want to hand them a bunch of parenting books, because that's not going to help them. Or if you've got someone who's really well educated and they're working a ton, you're not going to be able to throw a bunch of time-consuming things at them initially and get them as involved. Hopefully we can as things move on and we move in this plan, but just looking at what are the education levels in your church and outside of it as you're reaching people as well. So kind of compile some of those things to create your initial plan. Things like your ministry vision just kind of break down real quickly what that looks like. And if you like, I'll provide an example so you can see that as well. But we just wanted to look at how do you reach children's ministry? How do you reach the children? How do you reach marriages? And how do you reach parents and youth and all these different aspects? So we just kind of broke that down. For example, we said an aspect is parent ministry. We envision parents being trained by the church and having other experienced parents helping them disciple their children. And this would take place through different ways. Mentoring relationships, instructional parenting classes. Maybe we do something like a parent summit. We're having speakers coming in to talk about parenting, things like that. But there are different methods. And just looking at, within our vision, what would it look like? In a perfect world, what would that strategy look like? Because right now we're setting that goal now. Where are we going to reach? Now that we've done some research, where are we trying to get to? So write that out. Take a little bit of time. Write it out. Mine that I created, it was just about half a page. But this is where we want to be as a church, and then we're going to look at how we move forward. After you've created that ministry vision section, then let's look at goals and objectives. We've kind of done the research. We want to see where we want to go, and now we're creating the roadmap using goals and objectives to get there. So first, starting with goals, for example. A few that I wrote out myself are every age level ministry area will receive developmental, appropriate teaching and discipleship. You'll notice that these goals that I've written out are directly related to the core values that we talked about a little bit ago. So goal number 1, about age level ministry areas, we've seen what we want to do, and now we're going to see how we're going to get there. So within that goal, we've got several objectives. And these are going to be very specific to your church. So you've got your goal of how we're going to get there. So every age level ministry area will receive developmentally appropriate teaching and discipleship. That's our goal. And then we're going to break that down even further. For example, objective 1 of what I wrote down for this example. The children's ministry area will have age-specific large group curriculum for nursery, preschool, kindergarten through first grade, and 4th through 5th grade teaching times on Sundays and throughout the week. And this will be set up by January 1st. Now that part is key. Don't forget that. When you're creating your objectives about how you're going to carry that out, it's important to put a date on that. When do you want to get there by? Because you're going to start to see when this all comes into place in your plan that I've got this objective by this date, and this date, and this date. And I would caution you as you're doing that, don't set them too early, because you're going to need time to put some of these things in place. So as you're creating your objectives, create them so that they're doable, but have a timestamp on them. This is our goal. I wanted to give you guys another example of what that looks like. So here's another goal and a set of objectives specifically with reaching parents in your church. So here's the goal. We will empower the family to become the main spiritual disciplers of their children and partner with them in discipleship of their children. So that's the goal. And here's the objective. Objective number 1, to create a take-home weekly devotional for parents, which they can use for daily devotions with their children and youth. And then we'd have this resource ready to be shared weekly by January 1st. So again, setting that time stamp on that, but this is a resource that's going to take a little bit more work. Well, when are we going to implement this by? When can we realistically do that? Something simple that works as a devotional for parents to help equip them and get them started. Again, we're going to be talking about this in a little bit. I'm going to give you a lot of ideas for practical steps. These are just some steps that we can take. Another objective is starting a monthly parenting class that focuses on special parenting skills and shares important information about children, their developmental stages, and their cultural influences. Our objective is to start this class on June 1st. So you can see there's a few things that we want to work towards, but also setting a date. So we've got something that's frankly a little bit easier. We've got weekly devotionals, something short. Just have a couple questions to get parents thinking, get them going, thinking about discipling their kids at home. Then we've got parenting classes. A lot more work to prepare for that, to teach that, whether you're doing videos or you're doing it yourself and leading discussions and all of that. But give yourself a little bit of time. But have that objective in place. When do we want to start that by so that we can get things going? And then objective 3 for this goal is I wrote down have a total of 5 adults, including the parents and small group leaders, etc., that mentor each child during their childhood and adolescent years, and have this plan in place and carried out by, I put 1 year from our original date. So we had January 1st as the first due dates for some of these objectives, and then a year later having this in place. So that this is a little bit more big picture. We're going to need some practical steps to get there, but what are we going to put in place to get there? How are we going to set it up so that parents are involved, so that other members of the church are involved? We have 5 adults for 1 kid. You talk about a 1-to-5 ratio most of the time. You think, oh yeah, you've got 5 kids, 1 adult, and a small group, and you're good to go, or whatever your ratio may be at your church. Excuse me, but no, it's supposed to be opposite. Think 5 adults impacting 1 kid and discipling that kid. How amazing would that be in your church? We're going to look at some of the practical steps to get there, because you think, okay, you got parents. Sometimes you got single parent household. Okay, so maybe 1 or 2 a small group leader. So 2 or 3. How do you get there? And we're going to cover that in a little bit. So hang on. But as you're thinking about how to implement the strategy, first you got to have that strategy in place. So have your goals, have your objectives, develop that. What does that look like for reaching parents? What does it look like for reaching kids in different age levels? Things like that as well. Once you have your goals and objectives in place, then you need to begin to look at how can we carry them out? How do we get there? So we've got our plan. How do we do that? And make sure as you're writing this down, you've got this one document with all this information. Don't forget to include these practical steps as well. And we're going to cover a lot of those ideas in a second here. But first, the 2 last things you need on that plan are your programs. So the things that we cover, what are you going to do? What does it look like to have a children's ministry carrying out this step? Maybe you've got a take-home. Maybe you have a family newsletter. And a lot of things we're about to cover. You've got to write this down so you know what's your objectives, how are you going to do that, what's involved with that, who's involved with that. Maybe there are people waiting in your church that are ready to serve in some capacity that could help you with some of this. These are the things we're going to write down. So just keep that. Write that out in paragraphs. But this is the program we want to do. This is how we want to do it. And this is who might be able to be involved. Whether you know who that is and you have their name, write that down. Or maybe you don't. Say, this is what we think we need to get there. And write blank, blank, blank. You've got these ideas of I need a small group leader, or I need someone to help lead discussion in a parenting class. What does that look like? Put that position there if you don't have a name. Because as we're looking at this is to carry out this plan, you're going to be able to work with other people to carry that out. And hopefully we're going to be able to help you reach that point where you're going to be able to invite people to say, hey, I've got a plan that we're ready to carry out. It's written out. We've got some great ideas. I just need your help to come alongside us as we work to reach families. And there will be people that are interested in doing that in some way. And hopefully we can get some of those pieces started. Whether that means that you got to work a lot of work ahead of you yourself to put that in place, or you have a lot of people that are willing to help work with that. I want to encourage you, whichever of those situations you're in, it's definitely doable. Well, let's write those down. Let's write who you need, whether it's a lot of things that you're going to carry out yourself or you need people to come alongside of you to do that. Write out those programs, write out who's involved, and then at the end, we're going to put evaluation. That's the last part of this process, evaluating where everything is at, asking those questions. Ask some of those tough ones, and ask the people involved in these programs, once they're in place, whether it's a program or something that's already existing that you're improving on, how are things going? Ask your volunteers, what do you think? How effective has this change been? Has this empowered families more? And don't immediately evaluate. Give yourself a little bit of time. If you're starting something new, wait 6 months. Maybe you wait a year and evaluate it and see how it is as it grows. If you got something in place and you're improving it, talk with your team and just see how things are going. And if you think, have we seen growth in these areas? If not, let's sort of evaluate and figure out how to move forward again. Or if you're seeing growth, great. How do we continue that? Do we need to keep doing what we're doing? Is there something we can do to make an even bigger impact, and what that might look like? And I'll give you some examples of evaluation questions as well. So that in a brief summary is what your family ministry strategy plan can look like for your children's ministry, for carrying that out. Now next we're going to talk about some very practical ideas for carrying out this strategy in your children's ministry at your church. As we're looking at practical ideas for family ministry strategy at your church, and how do you equip parents? How do you reach out to them and implement that strategy? We're looking at a few issues that we're trying to solve. Parents are too busy, or parents aren't taking initiative, or they don't feel equipped. There are a few issues, and there could be more than one involved. A lot of times, families are just way too busy, or parents don't take initiative, or maybe they want to do something, but they don't feel ready. They don't feel equipped. And that's what we want to help with, is each of these three areas. Some of the solutions may be some programs, or we'll get a few program ideas to help you. Maybe it's supplemental resources. That's not something that's like, hey, this is going to take 5 hours of your week in addition to everything else going on. Maybe it's just helping what's already going on. Maybe we're improving something that they're already doing, even something that your church is already doing, your children's ministry is already doing. Also looking at maybe cutting down the ministry calendar a little bit. And that may make you a little nervous, but think about this. If you had your ministries where your children's ministry and youth ministry working together, and let's say you both had a retreat you did every year. Now, if the retreat happened around the same time, imagine what benefit that would be for parents to bring their kids, send them off to retreat on the same weekend, and then the time they'd be able to spend with each other. We're talking about matching ministry schedules together to maximize further impact. Maybe you do have too many programs going on. Maybe you need to assess and cut something back. That's something that you'll have to look at and figure out yourself. But looking at how do we cut back on what we're doing or make them overlap in such a way to empower parents and to give them more freedom. Because even if parents are too busy, if we can cut back a little bit, maybe we can model that for them, and they'll learn how to cut back on things themselves. So those are some of the issues that we're dealing with and some of the ways we may respond. Here are some of the specific ways. I will advise you, some of these ideas will work really well if you do them yourself and carry them out, and they will work great. Maybe it's a team member that does it. Maybe you've got someone on your team that can work on some of these initiatives. Or maybe it's time that you need to develop a team. It's a volunteer team. Or if your church wants to hire someone. A lot of times this really does look like a team that you put together, volunteers or else that develop some of these things, that run some of these things. And I'll encourage you to. You may be discouraged because no one's going to want to do this. Why would they join in this? And I just look for people that are excited in your ministry already. Maybe it's an enthusiastic small group leader. Maybe it's a teacher. Maybe just think of someone who might be interested, or ask your volunteers, hey, who do you think would be interested in this? Don't ask for them to respond themselves, but ask, who do you think would be interested in this? See if you can get names and contact people, share your vision and what you're hoping for. And just remember, people won't respond to an invitation that they haven't been given. So if you don't give them an invitation, they're not going to respond. 100% of people that don't get invitations don't respond. So just know that by creating this vision and by coming up with these ideas that we're talking about and presenting it to them, then you'll give them a chance to respond. And you may be surprised. You may get a team of people that come alongside you to help carry out these ideas. As we're going to look at some of the ideas, I just want to share with you. We're going to run over them very briefly. Just a big picture view. If you like, at the end, I'm going to share a little bit of information. I've got a small resource that I think will help you that I'll share it with you in a little bit that has all of these details in it. So don't write furiously, just listen, write down the names, get the concepts, and I'll tell you in a little bit about that resource. First, I want to share a little bit with you about some things geared towards families in your church. One idea is a family worship night. A lot of churches I've talked to are already doing something similar, but where families come together and they worship together. This has to be done strategically. Sometimes this is combined. Another idea we have is a family fun night. Maybe that's combined. So they're worshiping together. They're having fun together. They're having board games. They're playing board games with multiple families that you're all there working together. You're playing with them. It's not just the kids doing their own thing off to the side, but you're having fun with them in a family fun night. Maybe you combine that with a family worship night. Or kids are actively involved in worship. Kids are leading the worship. Even better thing is if you're able to work that into your church service somehow, where kids are engaged in leading worship as well. It just depends on the structure of your church and what you can do. But those are some ideas to get families together. Another thing that I've seen and absolutely love is when families serve together. We do something called Family Serve at our church, and it's where we create opportunities for families to serve together. This takes a little bit more work, but you'll find as you research and you look into your community and see what are the needs, where do we need to be reaching out to, and you will see different areas where you go, wait a second, I think a kindergartner could help out. Maybe there's a food pantry that younger kids can help out at. Maybe there's an event your church does. Maybe you've got a fall festival or something that kids can get involved in. Kids can serve with their parents. We start to see that there are two main benefits from this. One is parents are helping their kids learn how to serve, whether that's actually service of giving to someone, or whether that's sharing the gospel and doing things, outreach in the community. They're helping their kids do that. But not only are the kids learning how to do that, but they're also seeing their parents. The second benefit is they're seeing their parents do it themselves. And that has a powerful impact on kids as they grow up and they see, you know what, I'm doing this, but I also see my parents doing this and this. And that's the expectation that they'll have for themselves as they get older. So they see that example and what they want to work towards so that they can do the same thing that their parents are doing. And when you do it in the context of a service event for your church that's family friendly, we have service projects that are for the whole church. We call them family serve opportunities because families can go and serve as well, but the whole church is there. And they get to encourage these kids as they're learning how to serve as part of the church and be a part of the church. Not trying to disconnect them and say, oh, we've got the kids doing this project at this point, so drop your kids off, they'll do that. And youth will do this at this point, and we'll have the adults do the bigger projects that are more important. Not that there's anything wrong with age-segregated projects like that, but when you have them working together, they can make a bigger, powerful impact, and the kids will also learn from the examples of adults and youth, etc. Those are called family serve events. So we've got family worship night, family fun night, family serve opportunities. Those are some ideas for getting families involved and working together and spending time together in church actual events. A few things real quick for parents. And how do you reach them? How do you equip them? There are different things you can do. One easy thing to try and to start is doing something called a parent summit event. Now, you may have a different name for it, whatever you may come up with, but this is an event that's maybe it's once a year, maybe it's twice a year. But you bring in a speaker from the area, or maybe it's another pastor from the area, or even someone from your church to talk on topics for parenting. What does it look like to spiritually parent your child? What does it look like to help parents and equip them to talk about technology with their children and put those boundaries in place to keep kids safe with technology. Maybe there are other things that need to be addressed, like, hey, let's talk to our kids about purity. How do we do that, and how do we do that as they're getting older, before their teen years, after, and they're in high school? How do you do that at different stages? You may even look around and see, hey, do we have a counseling center, a Christian counseling center in our area? If you do, maybe you can have them come out and talk about children as they grow and what their developmental stages look like, and then parents can see, oh, that's why they have concrete thinking until they reach a certain age, and then they start to think abstractly. That's why some of my stories don't make sense with my 2-year-old. Now, hopefully they're getting that anyways. But you see, my point is that we bring in a speaker, or we have someone in your church that can talk about these topics that parents may not know about, and that's a part of equipping parents. That's a part of helping them. And by doing 1 or 2 events a year, that helps you make it easier on you, so that, hey, we're going to put our focus on this. We're going to promote this well in our church. And then you're going to be able to build on top of that and hopefully have a bigger ministry impact, equipping your parents through that. Another idea for you is having parenting classes. Parents aren't always excited about this, but you'll be surprised. The ones that feel like they're ready but aren't quite sure what to do, or maybe they don't have time, I'd recommend looking into doing parent classes. Maybe it's 3 weeks, maybe it's 4 weeks. If you do this multiple times a year or once a year, whatever that may look like, see what the interest is in your church, try it out. But if you have parenting classes on a Sunday, you're going to get more parents show up to that than you would if you had a special event that was on a Saturday or a weeknight or something like that. Because with those events, which are still very good, if you have that parent summit type event, you're going to get a lot of families or parents that show up that are going to be a little bit more engaged, and they need that equipping, and we want to give that to them. But on Sundays, you're going to have the parents that they may not show up to anything else at your church other than on Sundays. So you want to create something that reaches out to them as well, where they're going, we're going to go for service, and well, there's a parenting class right before it. And they have coffee, and maybe they have food or breakfast or whatever that might look like to encourage those parents to come as well. Creating smaller classes that they can do. Maybe that's spiritual parenting. Maybe you do something called Hot Topics for parents, and you just briefly cover something. Okay, let's spend 45 minutes covering the technology topic, and we're going to talk about it, okay, and have a couple discussion questions. Maybe we're going to talk very briefly about purity, or whatever your topic may be that you want to talk about. Creating a class that helps equip parents that wouldn't normally be involved in your church events. That's another way that you can help equip parents and empower them as well, just with the knowledge they need to disciple their kids. Another main one, and this is a much more involved process, I know, but sermons on family. Having your pastor or teaching pastor, whoever that might be, doing a series on the family, whether that's a 1 week topic or that's a several week series, something that just helps equip parents and raises the need. Because a lot of times when we talk about parents, they don't realize the importance of parenting and spiritual discipleship. They don't realize they're the primary people and that God holds them accountable as the primary spiritual disciplers. They don't realize. So looking at how we can equip them in that way, that might be something that a sermon needs to address. So those are a few ideas for equipping parents. And next, we're going to look at resources that you can give parents to help them as well. Now we're going to look at how to resource our parents in the church. How do we resource families for that family ministry, for spiritual discipleship, and help that happen in the home? We're going to talk about a few ideas. First, I want to share an idea that is fairly new in churches around the country, but it's working phenomenally well. If you look at a lot of other churches, look at churches in your area, see which ones have a booming family ministry, you're probably going to see this present. And that idea is a family resource center. Now, in churches, sometimes you have a website section, and that's phenomenal, but right now we're talking about a physical location that's in a main traffic area of your church. Maybe that's right outside the auditorium, or wherever that might be. It's a family resource center with all kinds of different resources to equip parents. That includes parenting tips. as far as, hey, what does it look like to be an intentional parent? What does it look like to, for example, for other life stages, be a grandparent, or to be a single adult and to disciple others well? Parents, different topics that they can deal with. Hey, my kid's dealing with depression. My kid is about to become a teenager. What do I do? And just the different things that can be happening within the family. Giving them pointers and things like that. So this resource center would have maybe like a pamphlet that has pointers for them. Hey, here's a topic. Here's helpful things. Maybe look at some scripture. Here's a few like resource questions. Like, hey, discussion questions for the family. What does it look like if this was working well in your family? And then at the end, having a resource guide. Here's a few books to read if you want. Also, here's a contact person in our church that you can connect with and ask questions. And for you as the children's ministry leader, they can then come to you and say, hey, I'm having this problem at home, or I need help, or I'd love to get a few new ideas from you. And then you're able to have that connection with someone who might have not normally come to you with those questions. Many parents, they say the problem is they've never been asked by their church if they need help with parenting. And that's just another way that you can help them as well. So Family Resource Center, and then I have some of those tips and things there. Maybe recipe cards for, hey, here's a fun family night activity. Here's a devotional for a holiday. Or even sometimes it's a several-month campaign of, hey, we want to practice intentional prayer in our home. Here are the steps to do that over 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. And this idea in particular is a lot of work initially. And then once it's going, it's a great thing. I'm sure there's a few resources out there. I'm going to recommend a resource to you called HomePoint. Check out drivefaithhome.com, and you can learn more about that resource. And they've actually already done a lot of this work in creating these resources, and then that's something that you can look at and purchase if you would like for your church. So take a look at that. Family Resource Center is great, though, for equipping families in your church and giving them those supplemental resources to help them and to have more intentional times of discipleship in their home. Also want to talk very briefly a monthly family newsletter, something you can create. It's once a month. Hey, just email this to all of our parents. Here's a few tips that you can use to help in your family. Or maybe you have like, oh, there's this great article I read the other day about 31 ways to pray with your kid or something like that. Then you can send that out to your parents. They can read that and get fresh ideas every month. Something very simple. If you're intimidated by something like that, maybe you just write it in a Word document, ask someone that's tech savvy at your church, hey, can you put this in a newsletter and send it out? But just learning something like that, creating something that's once a month that goes out to your parents to help resource them as well. Another idea is family devotionals. You may create this yourself if you have the time and resources to do that, or you may just want to say, hey, here's some that are available. We can buy some for you. We can download some for free off the internet and pass them out to our families, whatever that might look like. For example, I know a great resource that came out last year, coming out again. I've been working with Awana on a Awana Advent devotional. And they create a great resource that they give out to free for parents that helps them when it comes close to Christmas. And how do you celebrate that time and disciple your kids around that time? So an Advent devotional has devotionals for every single day. We live in a great age where there are a lot of free resources like that parents can download. So I encourage you to check out some of those resources. Maybe let your parents know about them, pass them along to them. Other things that could help too is maybe you've got a devotional. It's great for meal times. As families eat meals together, here are topics they can talk about. And here's a few questions. Just get them thinking about faith conversations and have those intentional faith talks, whether at meals or somewhere else. Sometimes you can also have faith talk conversations, topic starters. For example, if you want to talk to your kids, is there going into youth ministry? If you talk before then, depends on where your kids are at. Hey, we want to talk about some of these difficult topics. Here's what you're going to face. Here's how to establish good friendships. Here's how to remain pure. Different topics like that. There are lots of resources out there to help you help your families have those intentional faith talks as well. Last resource I want to share with you before we close out, and I share a few things to you real quick, is a Milestone Ministry. There are several people out there that created some great resources. One of them are the Legacy a legacy milestones strategy created by Brian Haynes. You can check out his book on it, but it's creating milestones that celebrate specific birthdays in a child's life and celebrating that. And the church comes alongside the family to celebrate those together. So when a child accepts Christ, having that celebratory time. When a child becomes a teenager, having that celebratory time and helping equip them, encourage them for what's coming ahead, but also letting them know, hey, we are doing this together. We are helping you as you grow in Christ and you are being discipled and are reaching out to others as well. So that's another idea for you as well. Hey, thanks for joining me today for the seminar on how to implement a family ministry strategy. Hopefully you got some good ideas to implement at your church and to create an overall plan for your family ministry in your children's ministry. How do you incorporate that? Because it's not family ministry and children's ministry, but hopefully it's something that you can use to create a powerful ministry in your church that reaches families and makes a difference in their lives. For a lot of the resources I mentioned today, I'd be happy to give those to you. Just go to kidmintools.com/family ministry just to see kind of that overall plan. What's an example of what that overall family ministry plan looks like, and to get a list of those practical ideas as well. Just visit kidmintools.com/family ministry. To download those for free. So thanks again for joining me today. If I was able to log on for the seminar, I'll be happy to answer questions. Otherwise, feel free to shoot me an email at Stephen@kidmintools.com. That's Stephen with a V at kidmintools.com. I'll be happy to help answer any questions you might have. Thanks so much for joining us today, and I hope you have a great day.